This morning, I want to talk about a couple of, I'll call them practices. They're sort of broader than that, which are really fundamental to our path. And they're really at the heart of the path. And they are, we'll call them self-observation and self-awareness. And these are not just abstract ideals, but practical tools that really are fundamental in helping us navigate the complexities of our lives, the complexities of the path, and cultivating inner peace. And without these practices, I think we really can't follow this path. I mean, they're that fundamental. They're necessary tools. The Buddha himself emphasized the importance of knowing oneself as a path to freedom. He stated in the Dhammapada, quote, "By oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By oneself is purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another," close quotes. So I want to today explore a little bit about why self-observation and self-awareness are so foundational to the path and the importance of practicing them in our daily lives. Self-observation and the cultivation of self-awareness is the practice of watching our own thoughts, our emotions, our reactions with clarity and with honesty as they arise. And it really requires that we step back from the stream of mental and emotional activity that is constant and simply at times check in and become observers of our own responses, our own mental and emotional responses, without attachment and without aversion. That's really the key and why these two intentions are so important. But as you probably already know, it's much easier said than done. Both of these practices of self-awareness, and I'm going to distinguish between them in a moment, and self-observation are rooted in the teaching of sati, or mindfulness, the first factor in the Eightfold Path. In practical terms, self-observation, we'll start with that, means paying attention to the present moment and noticing how our minds and how we react to internal and external stimuli. For example, take a simple example. When anger arises, instead of acting on it impulsively or trying to suppress it, we want to notice it, pause, and observe it. And in that process, can we identify a trigger? What triggered my anger? What does it feel like in the body? What is my awareness of what it's doing in the body? What thoughts are fueling it? What thoughts are perpetuating it? What unmet needs or expectations might lie beneath it? What attachments might be feeding it that are being thwarted? What role does the ego play in my angry response? We can really begin to look at it, look below the surface of it, so that we can manage it more skillfully. Because the process of observing it creates a space between the stimulus, whatever created it, and my response, allowing me to act with wisdom rather than out of habit, just reflexively out of habit, which often, if not almost always, is going to be unskillful. Self-observation in this way, it's not about judging myself or labeling my experiences either good or bad. It's about cultivating a sense of curiosity and openness about my response. What's going on here? What can I learn from this? And in addition, seeing that the response is impermanent, as we talked about on Saturday with emptiness, that it's also going to just arise in the moment and then pass away. But we don't want to feed it. We don't want to encourage it. We don't want to indulge it. And this insight, when we work with it in this way, it helps us disidentify from the anger, from the response. It helps take it out of the grip of the ego and thereby reducing its power over us, reducing its power to control us. While self-observation involves noticing what is happening moment by moment, self-awareness is a broader understanding of who we are and how we operate. Here we're not looking at individual situations or individual responses. We're trying to see the bigger picture, see the picture of our reoccurring patterns, our reoccurring habits of mind, our reoccurring behaviors as they happen over time, recognizing the habits, the biases, and the conditioning that shapes our lives. This is more broad than self-observation when we talk about self-awareness. In other words, it's getting to know ourselves at the most intimate level. Unattractive aspects and all, the whole package. And in Buddhism, this self-awareness is closely tied to the teaching of what is known in Pali as Panya, or wisdom. That translates as wisdom, which is cultivating through insight into the nature of reality, seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Self-awareness helps us understand the root causes more broadly of our suffering. Remember that the Buddha taught that suffering comes from both craving and ignorance, the desire for things to be other than they are, and the failure to see things as they truly are. And through self-awareness, we begin to recognize these tendencies in ourselves. We all have these recurring patterns and habits of mind. We need to learn what they are. We need to become familiar with them, because then and only then can we manage them more skillfully. For example, excuse me, we might notice how we always cling to certain outcomes. We have a habitual way of clinging to how we want things to be. Or we have a habitual pattern of avoiding uncomfortable feelings. I always go for a run, or go to the refrigerator, or pick up a magazine, or do something to avoid uncomfortable feelings. But each of those and any and all of those things lead to unnecessary stress and dissatisfaction. By becoming aware of these patterns, we can start to let go of them. We can drop the rope, or we can set the glass down, as Don often reminds us to do. When we begin to align our lives with what we talked about on Saturday, the truth of impermanence, the truth of interconnectedness, that moves us in a more skillful direction. These two practices of self-observation of our immediate responses and the broader self-awareness offer numerous practical benefits, both in terms of our formal meditation practice and in our daily lives. And let me just mention a couple of these. The first one, and probably one of the more important ones, is reduced reactivity. By observing our thoughts and emotions without immediately reacting to them, noticing them and pausing, we can respond to these situations with greater calm and clarity. And boy, is this useful in relationships. I don't know where it's any more useful than in our relationships, where unchecked reactivity often leads to conflict. If I let someone close to me push my buttons, trigger me, and I just respond habitually with reactivity, chances are it's not going to end up well. So reduced reactivity is one benefit. Cultivating compassion is another, because self-awareness helps see our own struggles and accept that they're just part of life, see our own imperfections, which in turn, if we allow it, helps us become more empathic toward others. We're all struggling. When we realize that everyone is navigating their individual challenges, we become less judgmental and more compassionate toward ourselves and toward the other person. Thirdly, these practices help break negative habits. Many of our habits of the mind operate, most of them perhaps, unconsciously. They're driven by deeply ingrained patterns that have been with us probably since we were small children. By observing them, it brings them to light. It gives us an opportunity to change them. If we don't know what they are, we obviously can't do anything about them. We can't try to direct them in a more skillful way. For instance, if we notice that we turn to food or our phones or something to avoid difficult emotions, with awareness of that, we can begin to choose healthier ways of coping with those moments. This practice also helps us develop inner peace. Through the practice of self-awareness, we come to see that most of our suffering is self-created. It doesn't come from outside. It is a result of how we respond to situations. So this realization helps us let go of unnecessary mental chatter, all the second arrow stuff, and find a sense of peace even in the midst of life's challenges. So those are some of the benefits of, there are many more, but those are some of the key benefits of cultivating self-observation and self-awareness. So what are some of the tools then? Mindful breathing, of course. When we pause, when we notice and pause, we want to immediately go to our breathing. Focus on the breath as a way of calming the nervous system in those reactive moments. By bringing our attention to the inhalation and the exhalation, we begin to train the mind and body to stay present and to notice the other distractions as they arise. Mindful breathing. Another one is the body scan, just observing the physical sensations in the body. We become more aware of our individual idiosyncratic way that our emotions manifest physically when we get triggered or stressed. For example, some of us might get tension in our shoulders or neck or upper back. Others might clench our jaw if we're angry, clench our fists, sweat. I mean, there's a number of physical cues there if we pay attention to them with a kind of a quick body scan when we're checking in with why something is setting me off. Not that this is in the moment necessarily, but I love this practice of journaling where we write about our thoughts and feelings, which really is a way of clarifying and providing valuable insights into these habits of the mind, these emotional patterns, these mental and emotional patterns. It's very different to think about and write them down than it is just to kind of dwell on them in our heads, because it really does, I have found, and others tell me, in their own experience, it really does clarify them and helps us to reflect on them. It helps us to see a pattern of change over time. So journaling can be really useful, as can our formal meditation practice, our insight practice, powerful tools for cultivating self-awareness, because we get quiet, we sit, we watch what's arising, we observe the mind with equanimity. We develop insight into the nature of our minds, into the nature of our habitual patterns and conditioning. Another one is to do daily check-ins throughout the day. Just pause, check, ask ourselves, what am I feeling right now? What thoughts are present? What am I reacting to in the moment? What's coming up? These moments, these check-ins, these just moments of mindfulness, if you will, help us stay grounded in the present. They bring us back to the present for that check-in. Because on this path, self-observation and self-awareness are not merely, as I said, theoretical concepts. They are essential practices for living a mindful and meaningful life. I don't know how we do this path without these practices. I don't know how we progress without cultivating self-awareness and self-observation. Both of them, in their own respective ways, one in the moment, one more broadly, empower us to see more clearly, to understand the roots of our suffering, again, as I said, most of which is self-generated, and to act with greater wisdom and to act with greater compassion. Because by cultivating, we move closer to the Buddha's ultimate promise of reduced suffering, the realization of peace in our lives. Now, again, let me say, the journey of self-awareness is not an easy one, because it requires that we face our shadows. We admit our flaws. We see where we get stuck. We see where we get triggered. But it helps us to observe and unlearn deeply ingrained habits. We are not prisoners of them. We have opportunities to shift. The Buddha has been translated, said, "You yourself must strive. I only point the way." In other words, what he's saying is he can give us the roadmap, but we got to walk the path. He can't do it. No one else can do it for us. But through diligent practice, through a commitment to this practice, we transform our relationship first with ourselves and then with those around us in the world around us. And we begin to really get a taste of that freedom that comes from knowing and understanding our own minds, our own habits, our own patterns of behavior. You know, these are all doorways that open for us, doorways to greater freedom, doorways to greater peace in our life. And in this way, the twin practices of self-awareness and self-observation aren't just tools for personal growth. They are gateways to awakening. They are gateways to reduce suffering for ourselves and for those around us. So that is a pitch for self-awareness and self-observation this morning.